So how often did you go down that road when having an argument?
Previously? Every time.
No.
Okay.
How well did that work out for you in the end?
Oh, terrible. It was the worst.
Welcome to the Savage Server Podcast. My name is Nick.
My name's Jason.
Today we're going to talk about moving on after an argument.
I've had a couple of those.
Yeah, just a few. Yeah.
Not me and you. We, as in separate.
Oh no, we fight. I just don't care what you say.
That's fair. Then it's not really an argument, is
No.
it? Okay.
All right, so a few things we want to touch on is having an argument is difficult to begin with. A lot of emotions are running high. And the entire time, as we discussed before, remember, everything you say and do, whether it's an argument or not, you have to try to be impeccable with your words. And when you're in the middle of an argument with somebody, say your wife, girlfriend, husband, friend, whomever it is, anytime their emotions are running high, you have the potential, if you don't hold your words accountable, to say something you don't mean, and it just makes things way worse later on.
It makes it harder to move on from the argument if you make the argument itself worse, right?
Yeah. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, one, controlling your temper and your words in that argument. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's easier said than done, right? That's one of the things that's the hardest. That's, as I've gotten further into my relationship with my wife, that's one of the things that I've had to work on the most, but it also has helped the most. If I don't say things in an argument just to argue, like just for the sake of being pissed off, or like all those things that you say that you don't mean, that are just because you're upset at any certain point, right? Those are the things that are the hardest to move on from afterwards, and they have the least amount of significance during the argument. Like, it's just the things that you say because you're pissed off or you feel disrespected, and it's crazy how much will come up in the back of your mind. Like when you feel hurt or you feel disrespected, especially for me, when I feel disrespected in an argument, like I definitely hear the enemy, like in my head, trying to get me, like, oh, you should say this back.
Like egg you on?
Yeah, just like dumb stuff, man.
Like just petty stuff.
Well, and it's because I feel like I've got disrespected, so I feel like this will make, it's like you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you back, right?
Tit for tat, yeah.
Yeah, and so those are the things that I try the hardest not to say.
So how often did you go down that road when having an argument?
Previously? Every time.
No.
Okay.
How well did that work out for you in the end?
Oh, terrible. It was the worst.
Because everybody replays an argument.
Those are the only things they remember, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that, like, you could have an argument and then a year later, you can't remember any bit of what that argument was about, but you remember the shit that your spouse said to you that dug deep, that was clearly just to hurt you. Like, and it's not, nobody's perfect, so like everybody does it at some point, or let something slip that they're thinking in the moment just because they're angry, and the majority of it it doesn't hold any real weight. But you know that it will hurt that person because you know them very well. Most of the time, if you're in an argument with somebody, right, that's happening because they've gotten to you in that way. It's somebody that knows you enough to get to you in that way, so you know them. Like, you know the stuff that hurts them. Like,
because they've been open and honest enough to share their weaknesses with you, and now you're using their weakness against them, which is one of the most screwed up things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in any relationship that you want to have after the argument.
Oh yeah, no, it's terrible, but it was something that I was more guilty of in the past. Yeah, I definitely have done a lot better with it, and we've talked about this previously, like being able to just take a breath and walk away from the situation before I say something that I'll regret. Yeah, but when I do that, it's It's really hard, man. Like, it's hard to come back from it, because sometimes even right after you say it, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that.
Oh, yeah.
But you've already committed, and if you're in a place in an argument where those things are being said, most of the time you're not even thinking about, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Like, you're just
It's a battle.
And it's like the snowball, right? That's rolling downhill, just picking up snow. It's gaining momentum, and then everything that you say, your spouse or your friend or whoever you're arguing with, like, I'm coming at it from the perspective of a spouse, because I think me and my wife used to have some of the worst argument like habits. We've done a lot better now, so I think that's just the way I look at it from. But you could do, I mean, same thing with your child, with a friend, but
I really hope you're not having those type of arguments with your kid, like cutting them down.
no, but there's people that do.
Oh no, hey.
I mean, so
I did that my whole life.
I mean, I've had arguments with my daughter, and she'll say things, but she'll, like, I mean, it's a child, right? So you're like, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, you're just like being really emotional, and I'm gonna let that go. Let's not, like, keep down, like, take a breath.
Yeah.
You need to go to your room. Go take a breath, because this is too much, right? Like, you very obviously are not having a real conversation with me right now, so I need you to go and take a step back. It's a lot easier to do that with your child, right? You can't say that to your, I mean, you can say that to your spouse, but you have to be a lot more tactful, right? You have to, okay, I need to take a step back, because this is, like, we're going to get into an area where we're not going to be productive here.
Yeah.
I need to take a step back, right? You're not, like, telling them to go take a step back and, like, okay, you need a timeout. No, it's we need a timeout because you are getting up there too, right? My daughter could never get to me in the way that my wife could in an argument. And that's, I think it's just, it's the relationship, right?
It's emotional maturity too. Like, that's what it basically comes down to is, being able to control your temper. And a lot of us, when we're in the heat of an argument, that's why they call it the heat of an argument. Your tempers are super high. And like Jason said, you're kind of flying off the handle, saying things you don't mean, and you have to go back and apologize to them later. And that just looks, let's be honest, looks disingenuous. You can't go back and be like, well, why'd you say that? Well, I just said it to hurt you. And then that gets thrown in your face again. Well, that just makes you look like more of a jerk. You just said that just to hurt me? And you're like, yes. All in all, being mindful of what you say, impeccable with your words, and controlling your temper during an argument will help you progress through that argument and have what we want to talk about next, which is a productive outcome.
Yeah, so making things right kind of come down to 4 steps, right? That's what we broke it down to.
Yeah.
And the order can be played out a little bit different. But number 1, acknowledge what your goal is. What do you want the outcome of this to be? At some point when the argument's done, or you have enough peace of mind or enough emotional maturity, take a step back and say, okay, we need to finish this. This needs to stop, right? We need to move on to a productive outcome. Like, what is the outcome that I want to be? Like, where do I want this to go? Because, like, whether that's your relationship, like the outcome of what you guys are arguing about, like, if it's something as stupid as dinner, right? Like, okay, this is an easy example, but I want In-N-Out, you want Taco Bell, like, okay, well, the outcome is both of us want to eat crap food. So what do we want to do, right? Like, what's the real outcome we want?
Yeah.
And then number 2 is acknowledge the role that you played in the argument. Acknowledge what you did wrong. Number 3, acknowledge how you're going to change that moving forward. And then number 4, do something that makes you feel connected afterwards. So those are kind of the 4 steps. We'll break it down a little bit more.
I think number 1, first and foremost, that we didn't touch on was saying you're sorry.
Well, that's what I mean when we talk
But these
about
are like the
acknowledge.
acts of showing that you're sorry and acknowledging.
So like acknowledging the role or the part that you played is part of that. I think that when you just say sorry, but you don't say what you're sorry for, it always seems less.
Oh, you have.
It always seems less genuine. But yeah, and that's something, it's easy to be like, okay, I'm sorry, let's just do this, right?
It just seems generic.
Well, and it doesn't have a lot of weight to it. It doesn't have the moving power to, in the future, to negate some of this, right? It's a process of, like, after action reviewing with your partner or your friend or whatever. Okay, this is where this got wrong. This is where this went wrong. Let's figure out how we can make it go right.
Yeah.
And then repairing the little bit of the relationship in that moment, right? So that's why you're acknowledging what you did wrong. Okay, this is the part I had to play. Like, let go of what they had to do. All you can do is control your part in it. So what did you do? How can I move forward and do better moving forward? This is what I did wrong. And then the next step was, how am I going to change this moving forward? Mm-hmm. And that's all you can do, right? Like, I don't have any control over what my wife did. I don't have any control over what my daughter did. I have control over how I reacted to it. And sometimes that's your part. Like, sometimes you feel like, well, I didn't do anything wrong in this.
Yeah.
At the very least, I can always say, I reacted crappy to that. Like, this escalated, and if I would have ended it sooner, or if I would have realized that things were getting out of hand, or just let that go sooner, at the very least, I can say that no matter what. Like, always, every argument I've ever had, always, I can say, I should have not let that get to me.
Yeah. I think that for me, what I've learned is anytime you feel yourself getting on edge and you're in like a heated discussion or an argument with your wife, your girlfriend, whomever, me personally, what I've done with mine girlfriend is that I had to learn that before anything even started, you have to preserve the relationship. That is the ultimate goal. Preservation of your communication, your trust, your love, respect, all that stuff. Because all of that can go to crap in a bad argument. Mm-hmm. So that had to always be on the forefront of my mind, because that directed me onto where I wanted the argument or the disagreement to go. And as long as I could stay on that path, it helped me better control my temper. It literally helped calm me down. Mm-hmm. And no matter how elevated she got, I've gotten to the point where I could say, okay, do you feel better? What do you want to come of this? How can we resolve this? What are we going to do moving forward? What do I have to do that I need to change, or maybe you need to change? And we come up with a constructive solution, because every relationship is going to have arguments. Every relationship is going to have misunderstandings, disagreements, arguments, even sometimes, in the worst of them, flat out fights. But being the man, if you can control yourself and know that you're going to guide this and see the red flags that are popping up, like, okay, she's upset. This may turn into something bad. And you keep yourself grounded with the things that we've talked about, and moving forward, the end of that argument is going to be productive. It's going to be easier to make up, because you're not going to have crappy things that you had to make up for saying, reasons as to why. And you guys can hold each other, even, be physical, go get dinner, talk, sit, watch a movie, whatever it is. But if you don't, this moving on past an argument is going to take days, and the resentment that builds up because of what you said is something that can last for years.
Yeah. Saying the wrong thing is definitely the biggest landmine to avoid in this, right? Yep. That's, I think, the thing that we're trying to push the hardest, because I think we know that we've done that.
Yeah.
And that's been the largest mistake that we've made in different arguments. I especially have had times where I've just been upset and just said things that I need to try to move past later, and it makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
So you brought up going to dinner, being physical, whatever you guys do to make things up. That's the final step that we came together for, that was do something that makes you feel connected. Yeah. I think the biggest part of that is it takes the fight and it puts you do this part where you're going through the problem, you're trying to acknowledge what you did, you come up with a solution for it in the future, and then that kind of puts a cap on the whole thing, where it moves it from fight to end of the fight, working through it together, and it restarts the relationship, as it were, right? It's like a reboot. Like, okay, this program got all screwed up in the computer. We shut everything down, rebooted it, right? Like now we're running the way that we're supposed to.
Yeah.
It's a positive thing to do at the end. Sometimes you don't feel like doing it, but I think it's really important because you're not just going back into life together without pushing into like a more positive space. Because yes, you could close the argument, you can acknowledge what you did, you can say this is what I'm going to do in the future, but if you don't have a real piece of that where you say, okay, now we're going to go and we're going to like reconnect, you can kind of go your separate ways, go do your other tasks for the day or whatever else you have to do. And if you don't have that piece, you can still dwell on it.
Yeah.
This kind of knocks that back.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like it's over.
And then you separate to go. I mean, everybody has different things they do in their lives, right? Like wives go do this, husbands go do this, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever, or the partners, or like as in like friends or whatever. They go and do their separate thing. If you don't end it in a positive note, it can leave that relationship lingering in a negative space.
Of course, and you just sit there and become resentful. And
even if you apologize, right?
Yeah. And it has to be an apology. It has to be both sides. Like Jason said, even if you've played a small role in that, you have to apologize for that small role, because you don't want it to feel one-sided. Because when it is, unless it's very unsided and a very unfounded argument, and that person just comes in like a raging bull or rips you apart and then leaves the room, then unless you did something prior, that wasn't something that you provoked per se. But preservation of the relationship is the biggest thing at the end of the day. You have to remember that, because you only control your actions, your words.
That and winning the argument.
You're an idiot. No, because no one wins in an argument,
that's
dude.
What we talked about.
And we've talked about this so many times. Like, you don't feel good after you've had an argument with your wife, your girlfriend, and you've like, yeah, I made my point. Take that. You said last time, like, I stuck it to her, and then you feel like an asshole.
You are.
You feel like trash.
And I say that being the person that has done that.
I have said that and done that, but you don't feel good, because you're supposed to be building your person up. You're supposed to be working through things with them, not both of you picking up a sword and a shield, beating the crap out of each other. And when it's all done, because now you've given her scars that she can't get rid of, or vice versa.
I think that it has become so evident to me over the last few years that this is why I bring that up, is we as men, for some reason, have the ability to move past those things a lot more thoroughly and a lot faster than our wives or girlfriends do.
Sometimes.
At least for me in my relationship, this has been the case. I have a thick skin, and despite the things that have been said to me, no matter who it was, I can always, I know who I am.
Yeah.
And as men, we talk shit to each other all the time.
That's our primary language.
Correct, right? So, even my daughter's acknowledged, she's like, you and Nick are so mean to each other. I'm like, that's how we joke, right? That's how, in men's groups, if you aren't talking back and forth and giving each other a hard time, it's not the same dynamic. You could tell that those guys aren't close, right?
Yeah.
But women don't have that same mentality when it comes to negative feedback, and they don't joke the same with each other. And that's generalization, but it does play into, I can get over what you said to me pretty quick. Like if you're like, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, it was this or whatever, I'm like, it's all right. I know that that's BS, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's true, I'm like, I know, but this is like what I'm working through, so I need to acknowledge that that was a real thing, so I need to fix it. But it's not something that's going to haunt me forever.
Yeah.
My wife has a lot harder time with things that I've said in the past that are totally just things that I've said that aren't even accurate. They don't hold weight, but she's had a lot harder time getting past those things.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the way that men versus women take those and really hold them to heart, because women tend to be a lot more centered around words and communication.
Yeah.
And you, as the man, have to remember that when you talk, because you may say something that is 4 on the spectrum of 1 to 10, like how bad it was, and she may say something that's an 8, but to her, yours holds the weight of a 16. You know what I mean? Like,
it's because of our role. It's because, like, you're telling this woman you're going to love her, protect her, be there for her, all these things, and she's looking up to you in some sense, in a way, and then you go and you lash out at her and you say terrible things you don't mean. You say cutting things. You, like I said, I used to have, quick wit and a sharp tongue because I had to defend myself, and I would use that against people that I loved. And it makes you look like an asshole, and it makes you feel like you don't feel like you say you do 99% of the time when you're not in an argument. And they don't want to trust you. They don't want to respect you.
No, I agree with the role piece of it, but what I'm trying to say is that we have to remember as men that our words to our wives carry a lot more weight when they're negative than their words do to us when they're negative. Because sometimes what we will say is, well, they did this or said this. This is just, I'm playing devil's advocate in like, well, yeah, but I said this because she said that.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Your words, number one, if you're doing things correctly and you're being honest with your family on a regular basis and you're holding yourself to integrity, your words should carry more weight.
Yeah.
Because they just should. If you're trying to lead your family, you're trying to do these things, your words carry more weight. But just in general, to your wife, words carry more weight, period. Whether they're from you or someone else, words will carry more weight with her and the way she sees herself, just because of the nature of her being more communicative in a verbal way like that.
Yeah.
I just think we need to remember we're not the same. We can get over things a lot quicker and a lot easier than our spouses can. And so we need to remember that, especially when we're in an argument and things could potentially go in a negative way, because we have to be so much more careful than they do, because we have the responsibility to not break them down, because it does break them down so much.
And that's kind of the point I was getting at by saying all that was, in agreeing with you, our words hold a ton of weight, and they can crush them. And even though they won't admit it in that moment, when they're perseverating about it later on, if you don't do these steps of trying to make up and reconnect and preserve that relationship, it's going to break your relationship down in the moment and continue over a period of time.
Yeah. So, and it's always our responsibility to take the next step and move into this cycle of fixing things. No matter what, be the bigger person, just do it.
Exactly.
So let's go through the steps one more time. To make things right, we've kind of broken it down into 4 steps. Acknowledge what your goal is. What do you want the outcome to be? Number 2, acknowledge the part that you played. Number 3 is acknowledge how you will change that moving forward. The issue, like what you did wrong, what are you going to do next time to make sure you don't do that again or do it better? And then number 4, do something that makes you feel more connected. Fix the relationship, end it in a positive note.
Exactly.
All right. Well, until next time.
Be a savage.
Be a servant.
Boom.